Hello viewers, tonight I would like to do some responses to comments. I have received quite a lot of them on this topic of the belief that Rinoa is Ultimecia. And I was quite surprised, to be honest, because I thought not too many people really think this or really care about this subject. Not too many people are really that interested in discussing this old idea that was quite this idea, this belief is quite old. Now, for those of you who are new to these particular videos, I will basically summarize this. In Final Fantasy VIII, I suppose there are mainly two main conclusions you come to when you win the game. I suppose the more prevalent conclusion is that Ultimecia is just some villain you know nothing about, who came from the future and essentially is trying to kill you for whatever reason. Basically, you know nothing about who they are, their history. You know nothing about them. When you compare this to Final Fantasy villains, such as Sephiroth, Kefka, Kuja, and many others, they were villains who you would see throughout the game, and you would get to learn at least something about their history, why they are doing what they are doing. You would learn, if you did not learn very much about them, you at least would learn something about their personalities. Even Golbez from Final Fantasy IV is a good example. In regard to Ultimecia, we know nearly nothing. We just know that she does not like Seed. She is essentially very she just wants time compression. Excuse me. Now, in regard to why, what experience that she could have had in life that would bring her to this very drastic measure, we have no information whatsoever, which is weird and very strange in the story. So even those who disagree with many of us believers that Ultimecia is Rinoa, even they are either left in the situation where they say they just do not know what the writers were thinking, or else they basically say, well, the game is just a bad game. The storyline is bad. And so for me, it has been very interesting to read these comments on my very popular video called Rinoa's Ultimecia. I think it's Final Fantasy VIII Griever, having to do a little bit with Greiver and some of the things Rinoa said in Final Fantasy VIII, along with other information. I would like to basically read your comments, review them a little bit, but before we get started, I have to do my due diligence in basically giving some people some resources to learn about our perspectives. For those of us who believe that Rinoa is Ultimecia, Yoshinori Kitase, his statement is very famous. Alright? I think the sound was on this video for a little while, but basically I don't want to play the sound because I don't want to essentially make this video too noisy. There's music playing in the background. But anyhow, many people bring up the very clear statement from Yoshinori Kitase when he was asked in an interview if Rinoa was Ultimecia, and he said no. Many people leave the basically any type of Final Fantasy VIII story conversation at that. Basically, they say what we have been saying and what many of us, the conclusion that many of us came to, that Rinoa is Ultimecia, is entirely baseless, because Yoshinori Kitase essentially said no, that Rinoa was not Ultimecia. However, Yoshinori Kitase would be asked again at the Dissidia NT event, where he was interviewed once again. And in regard to this, I am not sure if this had to do with the introduction of Ultimecia into the Dissidia NT game or something such as that. But this was an interview that Square Enix was hosting having to do with Dissidia. Okay, I think the music they're playing in this video is, I think it's, I think it was maybe I'm Aligned, but I'm not sure. I would have to play the video again. And the sound is off on this computer on my end. You can hear it, off the music and off the talking and stuff, but I cannot. But anyhow, basically he would fully retract his statement. And he said the reason why is because the project of Final Fantasy VIII has 3 writers, he cannot and will not say for certain that Rinoa is not Ultimecia. And he said maybe so because Nojima, who is one of our writers, who is very good at essentially putting secrets in the game, he also referenced Final Fantasy X, the sequel, and the character Cid, and a particular quote that Cid said having to do with, well, maybe we can, somehow find, something about the far plane and harnessing it for energy, and how that was connected to Final Fantasy VII. So he says Nojima is essentially a very suggestive writer, and he cannot really say what the other writers' intentions were when they were working on these characters. He is saying that he is just one writer, his statement is not definitive, and he himself simply does not know. Regarding Nojima used to answer story questions on Twitter, however people harassed him a great deal, and so now Nojima no longer is answering story questions on Twitter, that is to say X or Blue Sky or whichever platform they use now. Nojima is essentially radio silent. Let me put it that way. He is not involving himself in really deep discussions, at least on social media platforms, so no one can really ask him. Whatever Nojima knows, I think he wants to keep to himself. So for any intensive purposes, let me put it this way. For all intensive purposes, our conclusions as people who believe Rinoa is Ultimecia, we played the game and that was the conclusion we came to. Our conclusions are just as valid as those who say that Rinoa is not Ultimecia. This is due to the statements of Yoshinori Kitase himself. He says that he made a mistake. He fully retracted his statement, basically. You can watch the video yourself. You can watch him do it. So this was something very important that went over, essentially wasn't really covered by a lot of people in the Final Fantasy community. Many people essentially quote Yoshinori's initial refutation of the idea that Rinoa is not, is Ultimecia. So I would have to say that for those of you who are new to my videos, this is something I feel the need to make clear. Without further ado, let us talk about some of the comments on one of my most popular videos, starting at, let me see, did I pause it? Yes, I paused it. Starting at Doi Shinku Sarov. I believe this is a Slavic name. So, he saith, basically the story of Final Fantasy VIII is so complex that imagine how the brain of a kiddo playing this game would burst when realizing that Rinoa and Ultimecia are the same person. Let me briefly commentate as I go through these comments. I have to say, many of us we're in a situation where even when we were children, I know I played this game when I was a child, of about 12, 13 or something. I am not particularly sure. Maybe I was even younger than that, but I remember I had this strange feeling that this game was just simply, it was mysterious, it was amazing, and I was sort of taken aback by how theatrical it was. And when I finally completed it, and listen, in the 90s, we did not have many social media, we did not have all these social media platforms we have now. We did not have Twitter, X, YouTube, alright? There were forums on the internet that you could go to, for certain. However, many people, you sort of played your games. They were single-player RPG games, and you had your own ideas about them. Now, people would talk about it on forums, and it was a widespread belief. Many people believed that Rinoa was Ultimecia. They played the game, and they came to the conclusion that Rinoa was Ultimecia. Now, keep in mind that people came to this conclusion in Japan. They came to this conclusion in the United States. Wherever the game was released, people played the game and came to the same conclusion. There were also many people who came to the conclusion that Ultimecia was a completely separate character, which is an easy conclusion to come to. However, due to all of the foreshadows in the game, which I can easily point to, many people came to the conclusion that, wait, there's something in this game that indicates that Rinoa is Ultimecia. Now, there are certain things that I have to say. Let me see. I have a huge amount of information I can sort through, but there are certain things in the dialogue, for example, that you look back at them and sometimes you start to think about what they indicate. For example, Rinoa will say, when they're talking about the promise they're making there, by Adia's orphanage, this is the time when essentially they're making a promise. If anything happens, they're going to return here. Don't worry, I'll be here, right here in this spot at this orphanage. This is the flower field. Now, you see this big section here. By Adia's orphanage, right around this area, it's going to essentially be where Ultimecia's castle will be. Right near Adia's orphanage. Being held to the ground by chains. In other words, the chains are extending right by the shore, right where Adia's orphanage is, right beside it, just like the flower field is right beside Adia's orphanage. Except you see most of the air is going to be like, it's almost as though a lot of it has fell into the ocean or something, and it's just that the big castle is sitting there in the sky. But Rinoa says during the time when Squall is talking about this promise that they're making a promise. Rinoa will say, Squall's sword will pierce my heart. Now this cometh after Squall's thinking, even if you end up as the world's enemy or something. I'm not sure if I'm going in chronological order, but this is all said during that time when you are seeing Squall and Rinoa make a promise together to meet at this spot. Now you see this spot in the you see it in the beginning of the game, you see it in the ending of the game. So there were certain things, even if you were a kid, like I was, there were certain things in this game that you can say they are shown to you enough to where you as a young child, even if you're 10 or 11 or however old you were when you were playing this game, you see a pattern. And the more you see patterns, the more you start to think, alright, Rinoa, white wings, Ultimecia, black wings, Squall, he's all related to the lion. Ultimecia summons Griever. Ultimecia has yellow eyes. Lions have yellow eyes. Ultimecia has claws. Lions have claws. Alright, you can go over and over a lot of this information. The black wings, the fur mane. As you can see, Ultimecia's outfit has a fur collar that's black. Squall's outfit has a fur collar that is white. So when you really think about the creation of this character, Ultimecia looks like a devil. When Rinoa has her angel wings out, she looks like an angel. Alright, so there is something to this idea of pattern recognition, the use of symbolism in the story. It's very significant. So many people would play this game in the old days and they really genuinely came to this conclusion. Now, I did too. When I played the game, many people did. And so it was not something uncommon. Even as children, we all saw what we saw and we started to believe it. And I think for us, we ourselves cannot really call it a theory. Other people who discredit us, who try to discredit us, but can't explain the story themselves because they know nothing about Ultimecia's past, they have to say things, oh, you have a fan theory. No, we played the game, the conclusion we came to, we saw the same things you did. We played the same game you did. It's just that we saw all these patterns in the game, and we essentially, in the English script, I cannot speak for the Japanese script. There are people who played the Japanese version of the game, they came to the same conclusion we did. But I have to say, for us who played in English, it's perfect in terms of just the ambiguity of it. In other words, when I played this game, there was nothing that really disproved this, and there still isn't. Because you can easily rationalize it, and there's enough patterns in the game to show you that these characters are connected. Especially in the ending. The ending is a whole nother thing that I would like to talk about in detail. But let me continue this man's comment and just use that to guide our commentary, our discussion. I do believe I'm going to have to drink a lot of water throughout this video. So one moment as I take a drink, a sip. But I will play the video so you can watch something other than just the screen. One moment as I take a sip of water, good viewers. Alright. How refreshing. Okay, excuse me. So, he saith, I played this game, and I didn't even realize that Squall is Rain and Laguna's son. Let me say something else about that. As far as I know, we were never told that Squall was Rain and Laguna's son, but at the same time, as far as I know, now I may be wrong, because basically what I am doing now is replaying the game, but let me say this as well. Final Fantasy VIII is a big game, and if I were to be frank, Final Fantasy VIII is like reading a book. It's very big, and Final Fantasy VII was the same way. There is a lot you can miss, but I would have to say, I myself, that was sort of, I forget how I came to that conclusion too, if I even did when I was a child. I do not know if it was even explicitly stated that Squall was Laguna's son, but I think it's pretty obvious to us. I think it's pretty obvious to us that he is. I'm not sure if that was even told to us directly in the game, but I know that basically based on essentially my experiences from the game, maybe even some other people telling me, I eventually realized that, but I am not sure if I even realized that in the game, like as when I was playing it. So I am only speaking for myself, but it's very interesting because there are a lot of, like, for example, if it is true that if there's nothing explicitly stating that Squall is Laguna's son in the game and Rain's son in the game, that is pretty amazing, and that would show that, maybe this writing style is a bit more advanced than people give it credit for. Let me put it that way. It's a bit more nuanced than people give it credit for. Souffle. But let me continue with this comment that this gentleman left. The visual hints between Ultimecia and Rinoa, however, were something I could not miss. Rinoa wearing the blue, with the white wings. Ultimecia with the red and black wings. Also, even Squall's outfit, if you look at it, it has a little red belt that is kind of in a cross shape. I think his belts are red. He is in the black outfit. He has white accents in the outfit, white fur mane and things such as that. Even his weapon, the Punisher, has that sort of red and black look to it, and he has another gunblade called the Lionheart, which has Rinoa's colors, which are white and blue. But interestingly enough, the Punisher as a weapon is actually just almost basically the Punisher as a weapon is a gunblade that Squall can get and forage. Is just as good as Lionheart in terms of hit value. So they're basically the same, but I think the Punisher can hit all enemies, and the Lionheart's Renzo Kuken limit break, after you do your Renzo Kuken, the attack you use can only hit one enemy. So in a way, I think that some people like myself, I like to use the Punisher, and I think that is a reference to Ultimecia, in a sense, in terms of style, Griever, more or less, because the color scheme is also present in the Griever Guardian Force. So it's very interesting. We have, what else does he say? Okay, white wings, red and black red and black, and the wings, the black wings. Rinoa has a dog as a pet. Ultimecia has a cat-leg Guardian Force Griever, of course. Rinoa had Squall as a knight. Now, in regard to that idea of Griever, I did do some research regarding Griever, and some research regarding Quetzalcoatl. So the idea of Griever, it's very interesting because obviously he's a mixture of a lion, but he essentially, what Griever is a black lion. And so when we look at this idea from a symbolic perspective, Griever combines the symbolism of the solar lion. In other words, lions oftentimes represent the sun in symbolism, and the black cat. Furthermore, Griever is related to grief. That's easily discernible by the name, which is a word. A griever is someone that grieves. Now, the lions, they correspond to gold. This comes from a Dictionary of Symbolism, 2nd edition by J.E. Serlo. The black cat is associated with darkness and death. There's other things to say about lions and the idea of a black lion, which you could even say is related to the understanding of a black sun, but furthermore, the black cat is associated with witchcraft, and that very much does fit Ultimecia's character. So, if a gold line represents the sun, obviously a black line would represent the black sun. What is a black sun? In symbology, so to speak, the notion of a black sun is a sun that leaves this world during the night in order to shine in another one. It is a symbol of death and calamity. Well, that does make a lot of sense for a griever, for someone who is grieving and has a great deal of grief, which, as we know from the life of Squall, living in the orphanage, his sister, joining the White Seed ship and essentially leaving him, as well as his own circumstances of being alone and feeling alone. Squall had a lot of grief, so Squall was a griever. Now, I and many other people would say that Ultimecia was a griever as well, and that is sort of the emphasis that is going to especially come into play during the later part of the game with what Ultimecia has to say in regard to her last words, having to do with how you cannot stop time. So, obviously, if this is true, there's obviously some event or some history that is important to the story that some people believe you do not get, but if you believe Rinoa is Ultimecia, Ultimecia of the future, that she lives into the future somehow, and that this is a future her, then you can really explain that. And if you don't have that information, you can't explain this from any historical information in the game. They simply do not provide that. So, occasionally in graphic arts and literature, the black sun is a symbol of metaphysical angst and melancholia. So, melancholia is just sadness, is brooding. A lot of people in the game say that Squall broods a lot. It's kind of a depression of spirit, so to speak. Now, angst is troubled, you're anxious. A state of mind that way. So, Squall does have those characteristics. He has melancholia and he has a lot of angst. So that's like a black sun. That's like a literary expression through symbolism. A black lion representing the sun, but a black sun in this case because the lion is black. Squall weareth black. Very interesting. Ultimecia has black wings. She summons the black lion. Alright. Ultimecia has the yellow eyes. Okay, Ultimecia has the horns like the devil. She's in contrast to the angel Rinoa. So the idea is, it's contrast, it's yin and yang, so to speak. Very powerful, if I'm being honest. And for those of you who do not know, stars are often connected to angels. Many people call angels stars, and the moon is often considered to be very powerful regarding witches, and it's often associated with witchcraft. The moon is very important with witchcraft and sorcery. Now let me continue to read this souffle. We have Squall, Rinoa had Squall as a knight. Ultimecia claims Cypher as a knight as well. Why would such powerful sorceress need a knight? Let me commentate upon this for a while, because he really didn't go too much into that, but I understand his point. It is a very good point. Cypher in this game has a very interesting role to play. Many of you may not know, but it is indicated in this game that Cypher is a very major inspiration for both Squall and Rinoa. For me, Squall's the archetypical knight, at least in regard to courage. Now, he may not be a very kind character or a very merciful character, but he does show a certain degree of courageousness that Squall does really look up to. Now, this is said about Squall. Squall, early in the game, will say, it's a good opportunity this is when Squall and Cypher are talking. He's saying it's a good opportunity for me to basically, test my skills. That was when they were at Dolet. If I have this open, I can look for the particular scene that I want to see. Let me take a look, viewers. If I even have it, actually. You have later on in this particular game the scene where Cypher's talking about his romantic dream. I'm going to cut the music off because this is going to be more of me really elaborating on some things. Okay. Zell. Now, Cypher's going to say something about his romantic dream at some point. Okay, it was earlier then. I was too fast. Okay, let me take a look. One moment. I love battles, I fear nothing. the way I look at it, as long as you can make it out of battle alive, you're one step closer to fulfilling your dream. What? Your dream? Saith Squall. You have one too, don't you? Saith Cypher. Sorry, but I'm gonna pass on that subject. Yo, let me on it too. Let me in on it too, rather. Mind your own business, says Cypher. It's this freaking hell. Okay, he's gonna run down there and he's gonna say, I'm gonna tell you about my romantic dream. Or something, because I believe he's gonna jump down there or something. Okay, he's running down there because I remember Selphie decided to jump down there like a crazy person. Okay, yeah, Selphie's gonna come in and... Okay, she falls down. Okay, let me do full screen. So sorry, viewers. It really takes the immersion out if I don't do full screen. Okay, Squad B. Okay, this is a messenger. Named Selfer from Squad A. Squad Team's Captain... something. Cypher. And he saith... One of these days I'm going to tell you about my romantic dream. Now, when we play the game further, we understand what his romantic dream is. Cypher's romantic dream is to become a sorceress knight. To become a knight to a sorceress. That is his romantic dream. Okay, this is a little too far into the game. That was something else. I'm trying to look and see if I have... let me see. Which one is this? Okay, this is Selphie. It's not what I'm looking for. Okay, this is other stuff. This is other stuff that I... Okay, this is... That's not what I was looking for. But anyhow... What Cypher is... Gonna play the music again. I hope it's not too loud, souffle. Let me see, that's on 35. Alright, that should hopefully not be too loud. Now, earlier on, basically, when you go to Dolet to do the mission, Squall will tell Cypher, he'll say, it's a good opportunity for me to test. This is when Cypher wants to go and disobey orders and keep going up to the tower. Now, Squall saith, it's a good opportunity for me to test out my training. Thanks to you, I feel like I can take on anyone, even if they do fight dirty like you. Okay, so this is take on anyone. That's the main thing to take away from what he said. Now, Rinoa, when she's talking about why she liked Cypher, why she even loved Cypher, Rinoa will say, I really liked him. He was always full of confidence and smart. Despite talking to him, I felt like I could take on the world. This is amazing. This is highly significant because if you know anything about the story, what does Squall say when he is essentially saying, well, even if you become the world's enemy, I'll be your knight. The fact that Rinoa would say, and of course, you know, later on when they're making the promise, when Squall and Rinoa are making the promise, Rinoa is saying, Seed will come kill me, right? And she said, Squall's sword will pierce my heart. Okay, keep going. Now, Squall is thinking something. He's gonna make a thought here. I wonder if I took that particular one out. Okay, I probably took that screenshot out, but there's a screenshot somewhere, and maybe I have it somewhere else of Squall saying, even if you become the world's enemy. Okay, there's so much in that conversation. This game is full of information that points to her being, you know, Ultimecia. That's the information we're going off. Let me just be frank. I can sort of search through this document as I see fit. Please bear with me. It's going to be right here, because I kind of order things in a bit of a strange way. Okay, right here. Delete and paste and go. So this has to do... Okay, let me see. Because I have enemy. Okay, so this is something Squall will say. I wonder if I have a screenshot of it. Here we go. So Squall, when they're making a promise, Squall will say, even if you end up as the world's enemy. Okay. Now, what does Rinoa say about Squall, about Cypher? What Rinoa has to say about Cypher, when I was around him, I felt like I could take on the world. Alright, we also have the whole stuff about, hey, you know, we have the stuff about maybe I can be like a lion too. And then you fight Rinoa, Ultimecia, Freudian slip, because I believe they're the same person. When you're fighting Ultimecia's second form, the song is playing Maybe I'm a Lion, and she's literally inside that. She's junction her body inside of Griever. Oftentimes you junction a guardian force, which is a spirit that can manifest physically, into your own body. You don't junction your own flesh and blood to a guardian force to sustain them, which is what Ultimecia did. But anyhow, that's a whole... You see, we can go over all sorts of different points, but I have to stay on topic. Let me put it that way. So, the point we were talking about was that Cypher is an inspiration not only to Squall, but also to Rinoa. For Squall, he was saying, because of you, I feel like I can take on anyone, because you fight dirty, and you're making me kind of realize that I have to deal with, a fearsome enemy. I have to put the best I can into fight. And with Rinoa, she really was affected by Cypher, because she says, I felt like I could take on the world. And what is Ultimecia doing? Ultimecia is taking on the world. Ultimecia is the world's enemy. Okay, that is who Ultimecia is. So now we're going to talk about Rinoa's love for Cypher. Now, as I said, the commenter is talking about how Cypher is Ultimecia's knight, which he is. But before, essentially before all of this, Cypher and Rinoa had a romantic relationship. Now, this comes from a conversation that has to do with the time. Basically, this is happening when there's a discussion about, and you have to forgive the bad graphics in the screenshot. This is the original PlayStation version. This isn't the remaster on Steam or anything, so of course the graphics look terrible. But anyhow, we have Rinoa talking about, Cypher, and how she thought it was love. Let's go into this discussion. Quistis is going to say, it was your group that got Cypher involved in all of this. Your resistance faction, right? You must have been prepared for the worst. I'm sure Cypher was prepared too. So don't think of it as Cypher sacrificing himself for you. I'm sorry, I guess that wasn't much consolation. Now, there was talk about Cypher being executed for his actions by the Galbadians, essentially. So Squall will walk over to, because of his actions in Timber, that was the idea, I believe. So, excuse me. Squall is going to walk over to Rinoa. Rinoa is going to continue talking to Quistis and everyone else. I really liked him. He was always full of confidence, smart. Just by talking to him, I felt like I could take on the world. Alright, Self is going to say, your boyfriend? I don't really know. I think it was love. I wonder how he felt. Okay, so this is just up in the air. In other words, she's literally thinking it was love. She had such a powerful, strong relationship with Cypher. This is what she is saying about him. Now, Selphie will say, do you still like him? And Rinoa will say, if I didn't, I wouldn't be talking about it. It was last summer. I was 16. Lots of fond memories. Okay. So there you go. Rinoa is very upfront about the fact that, she thought it was love. And she says, I don't know how he felt, but I felt it was love. So if Ultimecia is, as is our belief, alright, Rinoa, we know how Cypher felt. Cypher has reciprocated that to the future Rinoa. In other words, he is basically a sorceress knight throughout the whole game, and he's serious about it. He's excited about it. He really likes being a sorceress knight, and you can tell how much he likes it as you play the game. He really loves being Ultimecia sorceress knight. So that is very interesting. He has no problem with it. So you have to wonder how much of that was based on Cypher's strong feelings for Rinoa as well, and essentially what he came to experience with her. So that would be a good narrative. That would have a good narrative function of explaining why Cypher is selected as Ultimecia's knight, the purpose of putting him in the story as Ultimecia's knight, and also talking about the fact that Rinoa and Cypher were in a very deep relationship, or at least she felt it was deep. She felt it was deep enough for her to say it feels like it's love. So let me continue. Let me continue with this very interesting discussion. So we have Rinoa's fear is to lose Squall and remain alone, which is actually Ultimecia's reality, and I would have to say this is a very good observation. In my opinion, it is a very good observation because we are going to take a look at some things that many people do not talk about, but we're going to talk about them. We are going to look at this area in the game, essentially the Promised Meadow, Adia's orphanage. When you get to this part in the game, the Ultimecia's castle is literally chained to the ground right by that orphanage. Alright? It's chained to the ground. Ultimecia's castle is in the sky. Ultimecia's castle is right here in the sky. But it's chained to the ground. It's like there's intention behind this. Her castle's chained to that spot. Chained to the ground where it's up in the air, but there's chains extending to this particular area, and you'd wonder why. Why here? Why there? What significance does this place hold for Ultimecia that she's anchored her flying castle, her floating castle you could say, or flying, or whatever you want to call it, right to this spot? Now, sure, it's not on the ground, but it's held in place by chains. There was an intention to anchor this right next to the orphanage. Now, not too far from the orphanage, you have the Promised Meadow, where Squall and Rinoa made the promise. Now, the castle is not in that exact spot, but it's close to it. So, you would say, what's the purpose of putting your castle there? Because this is in the future. And she did it. So we have Adia. And Adia will say, yes, I believe it was 13 years ago, this is my story. She's going to tell, Squall and Rinoa about when she saw Ultimecia and she gave her powers. But the point of my saying this is that basically the idea that the promise was essentially that Squall and Rinoa would meet at that spot. This is shown also in the beginning of the game. This is shown in the beginning of the game, in the opening scene. Let me pause the music. Okay, we'll watch this a little bit. Alright, there's going to be writing on the screen, and it's going to be exactly an exact quote of what is said later in the game. I'll be here. This is what Squall is going to tell Rinoa or something like that. And why? And you know, they're having a conversation about this promise. I'll be waiting here. Waiting where? By the orphanage. You know, in that area, that vicinity of the flower field. I'll be waiting at that orphanage. You can come to me. It's that, you know, it had a meadow out there. You'll find me by the orphanage, you know, by the flower field, right? Okay, and so this area has a very deep purpose in the game. Now, off the opening is the beginning part of this. The opening is foreshadowing. The opening foreshadows the end of the game. The opening foreshadows future events in the game that are very important. To be honest. So, in order for us to learn about this, we need to go and investigate the promise. We need to investigate that. So, basically, Squall's going to tell her, I'll be here. You know, I know, you know, if you come here, I'll be here waiting for you. Don't worry about it. You know, he's putting her mind at ease. So Squall will say, I'll be waiting for you. If you come here, you'll find me. I promise. That's the promise. So, this was the idea that Rinoa had, you know, that Squall had. And as that conversation progresses, it becomes dark. Rinoa starts to say, you know, if I am possessed, you know, you're going to have to just, and she makes this prediction. You would think it would not come true. For those of us who believe that Rinoa is Ultimecia, we kind of, you know, it did kind of come true. Squall's sword will pierce my heart. Well, they fought Ultimecia, and, you know, essentially, this is kind of a foreshadow that you're going to have to fight Rinoa of the future. So this idea that Ultimecia somehow, you know, anchored her castle at that spot is very significant. Now you would say, you know, why does Ultimecia have a castle? What's the purpose of Ultimecia having a castle? Why would she have a castle? We would say that doesn't make sense. You know, what's up with the castle? It's the future. Why are there castles in the future? You know, I would say the same thing. Why are there castles in the future? Because it does not make sense. Now, I did have something here that I had in terms of notes that really explained a lot of this. Let me see. Is it this one? No, it's not this one. I have so many notes, people, that it's kind of hard to keep track. It really is. Gonna have to have patience and read some things. I think it's a rich text document that I have. Rinoa the Princess. This is the idea that, or rather, it's not an idea, it's a fact that Rinoa is an Italian name that means princess, queen, or royal. You can go to Ask Oracle, baby names, and you can find Rinoa is a beautiful and unique name. Excuse me. With a strong feminine feel of Italian origin. It meaneth queen or royal, evoking a sense of strength, grace, and leadership. Very interesting, right? Let us continue. So, okay, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, because I have my rich text document here. So it means Queen or Royal. Rinoa is called the Princess by Zone, Watts, Zell, Quistis. Alright, I have screenshots of this as well. For those of you who want to, maybe you want a little bit of evidence here. Let me take a look here. This should be in the screenshots section. I at least have some screenshots of Rinoa being called the princess. It's the princess's nap time, sir. Our princess is in the room further down. What? You're gonna wake the princess? You got some guts, man. Okay. So we're able to see that Rinoa is often called the princess in Final Fantasy VIII. Rinoa's home happeneth to be what we would call a castle. Now this is found in Galbadia, Delling City. This is Rinoa's home. This is General Caraway's home castle, actually. Not house castle, let's be honest. Look at that. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, if possible. All I need to use is view and zoom in to this particular image. Let me see, do I have the music back? It's not playing. Okay. Honestly, I do not know if the music is distracting or not to you, but I just want to, sometimes a little music sort of is relaxing. As you can see, that's the castle in Delling City. Now, Ultimecia's castle is far bigger, but they're both castles. It even has a banner here, alright, with some type of heraldry, or whatever you would call it. Family crest even, but essentially she's very royal as a character. Her name even means princess. So the American Heritage Dictionary describes a castle as a large fortified building or group of buildings with thick walls, usually dominating the surrounding country. A fortified stronghold converted to residential use. That is exactly what this is. This looks like a castle. This looks like a very, beautiful looking castle. So it is for residential use. A large or ornate building similar to or resembling a fortified stronghold, and that is exactly what this looketh like. Now we have the Britannica Pocket Encyclopedia. What you read was the American Heritage Dictionary. This saith, medieval, a castle is a medieval European stronghold, generally for the fortified dwelling of a king or lord of the territory in which it stood, or a princess. So when we say that Ultimecia is in a castle and she is in the future, that maketh no sense unless Rinoa is Ultimecia, Rinoa is the princess needeth a castle, and Ultimecia, being the demon queen that she is in a castle. It maketh perfect sense. So we go from the royalty archetype, angelic to demonic, from princess to queen. Okay, her name means queen or royal. It's an Italian name. Julia is a Roman name. So we're able to make those connections. And we can say for certain that Rinoa lives in a castle. So if Rinoa liveth in the castle and Ultimecia liveth in the castle, that is a commonality between the two. Not only that, they both have wings. Okay. So that's very interesting, right? We're learning so much, Souffle. So let us continue this very fine discussion. So they look the same in the mirrored image, and this is how you basically, what would happen is people would really look at the ending and different views of their face, and they would note the similarity between their faces in the original Final Fantasy VIII, which is also a very good point. At least in cutscenes and things such as that, people, and the ending scene is the best way to essentially see some very interesting things. The ending, especially the part in the ballroom, really indicates that this game is essentially revealing a great deal of information at one time. But I know what he is talking about. The visual and lore hints between Rinoa and Ultimecia are anything but random. Many of us agree. Many of us absolutely agree. Rinoa, in my mind, after finishing the game, was like a container of sorcerous power, and I would have to say that is true. She got it from Adia. She got it from Adele. And after, let me see. And after grieving, nothing is mentioned about such event in the game. She loses memory and is going insane. Evil Ultimecia. And so the interesting thing about that is that they make a heavy use in the ending. They make a heavy use in the ending of showing us the ring, of showing us certain things in the ending cutscene. In order to understand the ending cutscene, you have to play it frame by frame. I mean, we could go through it, but goodness. Okay, one moment. Before I do this, let me stop the music. Okay, going through this can be really, I tell you, the things you see in it are amazing. What was I thinking about? They're going to, they keep giving you, okay, if you go frame by frame, if you play it a little more, they keep showing you the ring. They will show you the ring more than a few times in the ending cutscene. Like they want to show you the significance of the griever ring, that you get to name your guardian force griever when you're talking about the ring with Rinoa in the earlier cutscene, early in the game. And this ending, I tell you, I mean, I have my thoughts about this ending. I think the ending reveals everything. Just like the Final Fantasy VII ending reveals that Midgar is essentially just going to be destroyed. It's going to just be overgrown and nature's going to take it back. The Final Fantasy VIII ending is also very strange. Okay? But basically what I want to show you is they're going to keep showing you the cutscene with the ring. I want to talk more about this later on, but they're going to, and I don't know if I've skipped it or not, but they make heavy use of showing you that ring in the cutscene. Okay, and I do have this screenshotted. I have a lot of screenshots regarding this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you what I learned frame by frame. And here's how it's going to progress somewhat. You're going to see this cutscene. And you just go frame by frame in the game, and here you go. They just repeat showing you this ring a couple times in the cutscene. You say, why are they showing me this ring? They always do a close-up of this ring like the ring is significant, and we know we got to name Greiver. So there's going to be some information about rings with guardian forces on them in this game, having to do with the Doom Train ring that you can actually get a guardian force from. The implication is that Rinoa is going to keep this ring, and that somehow Griever is literally in the ring, and that somehow this is what is left of Squall, in a sense, or what she has left of Squall. And if Squall does not return to the Promised Meadow, to that place by the Adia's orphanage, she's going to stay there, and she has the ring. And what's in the ring is Griever. And if she holds on to Griever, she loses her memories. This is just an understanding that I have. But I think it's pretty obvious because they keep showing you the ring. They never, it's very... I wanted to show you something else, viewers, regarding this ring. And it's a screenshot from the Occult Fan magazine. The Occult Fan magazine is a magazine that has to do with all manner of mysteries that you may consider, secretive or strange. Now, when you get to volume or issue 3, you have Summoning Legend revealed. Look at this picture. This is a confidential photo of what is assumed to be a ring, that summons a guardian force. Legend goes that it was a ring that belonged to a royal family. Yes, you heard that right, a royal family. Now, regarding Ultimecia, Rinoa, Freudian slip because I believe they're the same person. Rinoa is the princess. Her name means queen or royal. Everybody's calling Rinoa the princess. Rinoa liveth in a castle. Ultimecia liveth in a castle. You cannot make this stuff up. This stuff is in the story. This stuff is in the game. It's pretty obvious and pretty amazing. Now let's continue to the screenshot and really read it. So the ring belonged to a royal family. Its name and whereabouts are unknown. The legend says you must have 666 items. That's a reference to the Mark of the Beast in the Book of Revelation. So these people who made this game know how to reference things. They're very keen and apt regarding culture, even Western religious culture. So basically this ring can summon the Guardian Force. The Guardian Force you are able to summon with this ring is Doom Train. Now, obviously, we would say if we have the Griever ring, the Guardian Force you are able to summon with it is Greiver. You get to name Greiver, just like any other Guardian Force that you can summon. So you would think, thinking about that, one party member in our party can summon that. Okay, and obviously, if Rinoa has Squall's ring, it is Rinoa summoning Greiver. That is kind of the logic behind what many of us have, behind the conclusion that many of us have come to. And there is so much more information to review. You see that I am sort of, going through one thing after the next. That's because I have the information here and ready at hand. I can just go from one to the next without much of a problem. Okay, because I've been studying this a very, very long time. You can probably tell by how I'm talking. I really love this game, so it's very easy for me to find information like this because I know a lot about symbolism as well. And, the people who don't believe that Rinoa is Ultimecia, a lot of them don't really have the interest in reviewing things like this, so someone has to do it. But anyhow, viewers, I'm going to close that. Okay. I'm going to play this video for a little while. I'm going to take a sip of water, viewers. One moment. Okay. Excuse me, let me continue. This is all very exciting. Let me see. What else did this man say? Okay. So the time loop is an idea that has to do with this idea of essentially the promise, I think, and that, Ultimecia, she stays in the same place when that you and Rinoa made the promise at. Basically by the orphanage. Her castle's right near the orphanage, overlooking, the Adia's orphanage and the flower field where you made the promise. Though I'm sure there's no flower field there now because everything's just gray and whatnot. But anyhow, the time loop was broken only after Rinoa was able to find Squall during time compression. That's true. If you watch the ending, that's the truth. And saved his life. But it is almost, let me say this, regarding that ending, let me close the beginning. I don't really need that. Regarding that ending, the part he is talking about is very interesting. She touches him, but the ending I would like to go into more detail about. I may do a whole new video about that, but it's true. It's almost as though when you're watching the ending, it's almost like Rinoa had a sort of power within this time compression, where all she had to do was touch Squall, and all of the darkness and all of the time compression, all of the power that was there, just sort of the power is dispelled, and Ultimecia is sort of, whatever she did to time, it's almost like the power to undo it is solely within Rinoa's hands. It's very interesting. And the beginning also references that with the black feathers falling in sort of the last part of it. But anyhow, let me continue here. When Squall was saved by Rinoa, Rinoa's future changed, and there was no Ultimecia who had to travel back in the past to give her powers to Adia after being defeated. And it's weird. It's hard to tell about that particular part of the ending, because that particular part of the ending was, it was a bit hard to understand. And personally, you do see in the ending the same thing happen, kind of like something repeating. Like, these events happen, but let me see, where does it happen? I'm not sure. I mean, this is I don't think he did the part where, but basically there's a part in the end of the game where you can see Ultimecia walking up to Adia and essentially giving her powers or something like that. So I mean that's hard for me to explain. I just figured she did it anyway. But yes, but at the same time, I have to say, in terms of time compression, it seems like, maybe he's right. I can't say. I'm just basing everything on what I see. But I'm replaying this game, so maybe he could be absolutely right. But anyhow, let me see. Now he saith, I believe they wanted to make the story more easy to swallow. I disagree with this statement, because I think they made the story in a very good way, and I think everything, if you pay enough attention, everything is explained. So they simplified it. It's not unusual in later development stages, but many things have already been hard-coded into the game, have already been done, essentially. Don't expect producers to admit they've released an unfinished game on the market. Back then, this required a lot more effort, and there was no online patching. Nevertheless, the writers did an amazing job here, because they left so many open doors for interpretation. I do not agree at all with that statement. And the reason why is I often hear this. Well, they will say they believe Rinoa's Ultimecia, but they will say the game is unfinished. I am of the opposite opinion. I think that this was intentionally hidden in the game. They did not want you to understand. They wanted to leave it unexplained, in my opinion. Now, from playing the English version of the game, and I'm just speaking as an American who played this and based on my memories and what the game is to me, they didn't have anything that disproved what we think. Now, there's Japanese people who came to the same conclusion I did. They played the Japanese game. They can speak on that. But for me, I played the whole game. I'm perfectly satisfied with the story, and I believe that my conclusion is the right one. I don't believe the game is unfinished. I believe that, sure, there could be things that were, that could be a bit more developed, but I believe it's a finished game. The game is very long. The game essentially provides all of the story points that we need. The game provides a full story. And I would have to say, at least for me as an American, my experience in English was basically good. I came away being satisfied with this Final Fantasy game. To me, it feels very finished. And this is why a lot of people say they want a remake. They say, well, Final Fantasy VIII, it wasn't finished, or it's confusing to them. Now that I've had the time to play it a few times and really think about it, the game does not seem unfinished to me. There are things I haven't even talked about regarding Final Fantasy VIII that I'm finding something new every time I play the game, because I'm finally replaying the game and screenshotting everything relevant that I see. So that's kind of my project now. So I understand a lot of people have this opinion that they just decided to renege on that idea. They decided to step back on that idea and not really make it seem like, Rinoa's Rinoa, Ultimecia's Ultimecia, and that she's a separate character. I believe they left so many foreshadows in the game that this is something you can figure out, whereas they didn't really explicitly say, at least in my English version, that Rinoa, there was no indication that indicated that, that my ideas and beliefs are not within the realm of possibility and even valid. And the fact that Yoshinori Kitase, as I said, has basically come right out and retracted his statement, that means that basically I have room to to look at this again and really, sort of, basically, think about my conclusion. Do I think I'm right? What are my thoughts today? And as I look back on it, as I replay the game, I come to the same conclusion I had when I was a kid. Rinoa's Ultimecia, still to me, just like when I was a kid and played the game, I came to that same conclusion. So I would have to say, for me, the game is finished. Now, considering this video took a bit longer than I thought it would, and I am feeling a bit winded, I think this video would just be addressing this man's comment. Okay, this man's comment was very interesting, and it allowed me to cover a lot of things. I do want to make very substantive videos that are not just comment responses, more videos about particular points that I have the need to make, okay, about the story, about my conclusion, about many of our beliefs that Rinoa is Ultimecia. I have a lot of information. So, this was fun just to talk about what people have been saying. I am very happy that people have been having very, deep discussions about this again. It used to be people had stopped talking about this belief that Rinoa was Ultimecia. And it was sad because a lot of people would just be very rude to people and people would just stop talking about it. And so now I think people are talking about this again. Though I would say a lot of people are really just sort of calling it a theory, and they're saying that, our beliefs about what we experienced in the game are not valid. And I think that is the first mistake that many people make when they think this game is unfinished. The fact that you could play the game and come to a conclusion, an honest conclusion that Rinoa is Ultimecia, just think about it. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was the point, that certain people would think Rinoa, is Ultimecia. I see so many foreshadows, so many things in the game indicate this, and so you as a player come to that conclusion on your own. Maybe that's the point of making the story that way. Maybe it's not unfinished. Maybe it's just that they wanted you to think. They didn't want to reveal everything to you so that you would not have the experience of thinking it through. So that is my experience. I really believe that this is a finished story that was made intentionally this way, in a secretive way. So this was fun, viewers. I had a lot of fun talking about this, as always. I would like to say, may you be blessed, and farewell, viewers. All the best. If you heard a dog barking, that's my Chihuahua. He's been having a little allergy problem. He's been itching a lot and scratching himself, and so he's been barking all night. I don't know if you can hear him or if you heard him, but yes, he's been barking. Anyhow, as I said, farewell, viewers.